They must have been surprised when I got into that ring. I've seen a million parodies of
Welcome
me.
to a deep dive. We're looking at your sources on a really significant piece of legislation, H.R. 1, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act.
Yeah, it just squeaked through the House, didn't it? May 22nd.
Barely. 215 to 214. It's a budget reconciliation package, and it's already causing quite a stir.
Oh, absolutely. You've got figures like Elon Musk being incredibly critical. He called it, what, a disgusting abomination?
That's right. And urged people to kill the bill. He made some pretty strong claims, bankrupting America, for one.
Right. So today we're going to use these sources, independent analyses, reporting, the lot, to really unpack what's inside H.R. 1.
Exactly. We want to see how the different takes, including Musk's, stack up against the data, and ultimately what it means for you.
Okay, let's maybe start with the big picture financials, the deficit, the debt. Proponents said this bill would, quote, jumpstart the economy.
And achieve the largest deficit reduction in nearly 30 years. Big promises.
Very big. But then you look at the independent analyses, the CBO, the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, Penn Wharton Tax Foundation.
The usual nonpartisan groups, what did they find?
Well, pretty consistently, they project increases in the national debt over the next decade, not decrease.
Increases. How much are we talking?
It varies a bit, but the range is roughly $1.7 trillion on the low end, maybe over $5 trillion if some things become permanent, according to CRFB.
Wow.
Yeah. And the CBO specifically estimated, I think, a $2.4 trillion increase in the primary deficit that's before interest.
So $3 trillion once you factor in interest costs on that new debt?
That's the CBO number, yes. So these independent sources seem to align more with the concerns about increasing debt, like Musk's voice.
And didn't Moody's also weigh in? The credit agency?
They did. They actually downgraded the U.S. debt rating and cited, among other things, fiscally irresponsible policy tied to this bill.
Okay, so the fiscal picture seems quite different from the initial claims, but what about Musk's claim of it being a mountain of disgusting pork? Did the sources find unrelated stuff tucked in?
They certainly flagged some provisions that seem a bit out of place for a budget bill.
Like what? Reconciliation's supposed to be about budget matters, right?
Generally, yes.
Yeah.
But sources pointed to things like a 10-year ban on states regulating AI.
A decade-long AI rule in this bill.
Yep. And restrictions on federal courts enforcing contempt orders without security bonds.
Yeah.
Also, different S&FP work requirements based on marital status.
So things that aren't directly about taxes or spending.
Exactly, which supports that idea of using the reconciliation process to push through policy riders that might not pass otherwise. The sources definitely characterize some of this as, well, pork.
Okay, let's shift to energy. Musk claimed a bias targeting green energy, helping oil and gas. Do the sources bear that out?
They do, actually,
Yep.
pretty clearly. The bill specifically accelerates the repeal or phase out of major clean energy tax credits from the IRA.
Which ones?
Things like the credits for clean electricity production, clean energy investment, clean hydrogen, even manufacturing credits for solar, wind, EVs. Section 45Y, 48E, 45V, 45X, those key ones.
So rolling back recent clean energy support.
Right. And rescinding unspent IRA funds, repealing the methane tax.
And on the other side, for fossil fuels.
The bill mandates more oil and gas leasing on federal lands and waters the Gulf and WR onshore. And it puts money towards refilling the Strategic Petroleum Reserve.
So that does look like a deliberate policy shift, supporting fossil fuels while actively cutting clean energy incentives.
It certainly reads that way in the sources, yes.
Yeah.
Aligning with that criticism of bias.
Okay, one last claim. The process. Musk and others said it was rushed and nobody could read it. What did the sources say about how it passed the House?
Well, they describe a very fast process. The House used what's called a closed rule.
Meaning limited debate, limited amendments.
Exactly. And the timeline was incredibly tight. It went from the Rules Committee sending it out to the full House vote in roughly 24 hours.
For a bill over 1,000 pages long.
Right. And you had lawmakers like Representative Green quoted in one source saying it was really hard to even read it properly given the speed and last-minute changes.
So the procedural reporting seems to back up those concerns about a lack of transparency and, well, a rushed process.
Yeah, it does raise questions.
So pulling all this together from the sources, what does H.R. 1 really mean for you, the listener?
Well, first off, those debt projections matter. Higher national debt eventually impacts the whole economy, interest rates, future spending.
And the specific policies have real-world effects, right? Energy costs, maybe changes to safety nets like S&T, how AI develops, even court functions.
But absolutely. These aren't just abstract numbers. They can touch daily life.
And maybe just as important is how it happened. The process itself tells us something about, how laws get made these days.
Definitely. The speed, the limited debate on such a massive bill, it raises questions about representation and accountability.
So looking back at the sources, it seems the independent analyses and the reporting on the bill's content and process, they largely align with many of the specific criticisms Musk leveled.
Yes. Regarding the deficit impact, the presence of unrelated riders or pork, the distinct energy policy shift, and the concerns about the rushed legislative process, the sources provide evidence consistent with those points.
And now it hits to the Senate, which is a different ballgame, right?
Totally different. They have the Byrd Rule, specifically designed to strip out provisions in reconciliation bills that are considered extraneous matter, things not primarily about the budget.
So we should probably expect significant changes there.
Almost certainly. It'll be interesting to watch.
Indeed. So maybe the final thought for you to consider is, what does this whole episode with H.R. 1, its contents, the criticisms, the process reveal about the priorities and maybe the power dynamics shaping major legislation in Washington right now? Something to think about as this bill continues its journey.
They must have been surprised when I got into that ring. I've seen a million parodies of me, and I don't get a thing.